moving on, item C. Ms. Owen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C is discussion and possible action on a resolution regarding school vouchers. I did not bring this in January because we were waiting for some actual language for a bill. And so I want to let you know what's in the packet that we're looking at. The first page of your packet is the resolution version that I'm suggesting. It is a combination of model language from TSBA, some language that we have had before, and some language from other districts that in some cases made the model language a little more user-friendly, I think. It made it a little easier for the public to understand. So I tried to combine those, and so that is my suggested version. The next page that you have is just TSBA's model resolution, and the red line is just where I filled in our district information. So it's TSBA's resolution, our district information filled in. I've made no other changes there. The third page you have is TSBA's just issue brief. It's just a little explainer. So this is not one of their priorities this time around, but this is an explainer to help board members understand vouchers. And the next page is where things get a little bit tricky. So I tried to wait for bill language, so I've been watching for that bill language to come out, and as soon as a bill dropped, of course, I downloaded it. And turns out that that was not supposed to happen. The bill wasn't supposed to be posted. So this bill, I've called it an early version. This bill number will not be the voucher bill number, so that's why there's a little red line through it. The number Senate Bill 2095 is completely different, has nothing to do with this at all. However, this is, there have been a couple of versions out there floating around, and this seems to be reasonable to what we can expect the bill to look like when it actually comes out. It's going to be in some caption bill somewhere. We don't know which caption bill. I have a lot of thoughts about transparency there, but we'll just hold on to those. So this is the closest I think we can reasonably expect, and it matches pretty much the discussion that I've heard from legislators. So I think that would be something useful for us just to take a look at and consider. I think all of the issues here are basically addressed in the resolution. So if they are there or not, I think as soon as the State of the State address happens, we will have a better idea of language. And so hopefully by Thursday, we'll be able to look and see if anything has changed in here, if there have been any accountability measures added, which right now there really aren't, or any other things like that. I guess, does anybody have any questions about any of that?
Ms. Pike.
Thank you. I kind of a question, comment. I saw TSBA's notifications about this, and I've briefly skimmed this, and I apologize if I missed anything, but is it worth noting that as it looks, at least with the first year of the vouchers as they're proposed, that anyone opting for them has to waive their right to any IDEA or any special education services or anything like that? Is that worth noting, or?
Are you saying worth noting in the resolution?
Yeah.
I think if that turns out to be in the language, yes. I think that's part of an accountability measure. So whether we want to pull that out separately, I'd be glad to add that if we want to.
Okay. I didn't know how much weight that might carry. If, especially if this is something that we did move forward on and we're going to send to them to ask for that accountability.
Anyone else? Any more discussion? Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And preparing for this meeting, I thought this would get a lot of conversation. So I didn't want it to skip me real quick when I was thinking about what I want to say. First, I know all of us come to this with very different kind of opinions, and I appreciate Ms. Owen doing work on this. Obviously, I don't think it's any surprise that not everyone on our board probably takes the same stance about being against vouchers or for vouchers. I'm certainly not against private schools. My wife started teaching in a private school. Thank you. My son went to kindergarten in a private school, and then we realized we couldn't afford it, so we made the switch to public school. I don't know if he would have continued to stay in there. I think my biggest concern with vouchers in terms of where we are currently within the state is the current voucher program was proposed as a pilot. That pilot's been running for less than 2 school years. And Dr. Reiswick, I'm sure you've run lots of pilots in your day, but typically you want to give a pilot time to succeed or fail and to learn from. And to, at this point, as a state legislature, to say, hey, we feel like we've learned enough, we're going to actually roll this thing out statewide, to me is very premature. I mean, I was in a presentation this last week, and some Tennessee Department of Education numbers were presented that actually said, at least up till now in the pilot, that on average, our kids who have used the ESSA voucher program in private school or in private schools, private ESSA voucher program, on average are seeing 19 percentage points less on average across TCAP math and ELA scores than public schools, which to me, there's a lot of questions about that. I don't know which groups they're comparing, and I would want to really dig into that number and kind of suss it out. But if it is what it says on the surface, that kids on average are performing at 19% lower percentage points if they're using a voucher, I mean, to me, I've got real questions about that. I think we as a school board need to consider in earnest Ms. Owens' proposal in terms of a statement. I mean, obviously, TSBA, which was already referenced earlier in this meeting, we look to them a lot for kind of guidance around legislation. They put together this. They also say that they oppose it. But we also know that there's other districts across the state who have already said that. I know all of us as board members will have reasons we are for it and reasons that we're not for it. To me, it's very premature to say, let's go statewide and do this when we don't really understand the ramifications for it. So.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Ms. Owen, Mr. Triplett.
I was just going to take any other questions, but if that's all, the last thing I would say about this is that as school board members who are talking about trying to pay our teachers more, pay our staff more, retain people, have more funding available, I think we really have to look at the grand scheme of things. And our legislators keep telling people that it's not coming from the same bucket of money, but the bottom line is that our tax dollars are a big bucket of money. And when you're taking out of that bucket, it's not going into our bucket. So that's the biggest thing that's concerning to me. It's not whether students might choose to leave our district, which could also be a huge chunk of money, but all of the funding that should be coming to our schools. If it's being held out for something else, then obviously that's impacting us. To say that it's not coming from TISA, that's either a really serious lack of understanding from those folks of how TISA works, or just not wanting to talk about the fact that they determine how much goes into TISA. TISA is a formula. TISA is not funding. So they are determining whether in the big bucket of money, part of it goes into TISA or part of it goes into vouchers. So it's really unreasonable to say that it wouldn't come from our funding. So anything that we are looking at that takes any kind of money, I think we have to realize that this takes from that. Long, long ago, when Tennessee was looking at desegregation, were they going to fund 2 separate school systems, or were they going to fund one school system? every state understood that funding 2 school systems doesn't work. There's not enough money to fund 2 school systems. So I think we could even go back and look at the late 80s. Right here, not enough money to fund 2 school systems. So when the state is trying to fund public schools and private schools, and when those private schools in some cases are going to be getting more money than public schools in some of those counties, I think as representatives who were elected very specifically to care for our public schools, it's incumbent on us to make sure that we tell our legislators that this is not in the best interest of our students. Thank you.
Mr. Triplett.
Yeah,
We can't hear other board members. Thank you.
I appreciate you bringing this resolution, and I know that we had this as a legislative priority a couple of years ago, and then as this board actually voted to remove that, opposing vouchers off of that legislative priority list, this same board, I don't know that opinion has changed, or if folks on this board, that opinion has changed. I think we have a responsibility as board members, of course, to assist Dr. Weiswick and his team and have the best schools in Knox County we possibly can, and the ability to compete locally and beyond. And I think Dr. Weiswick's doing a great job, and we've seen some improvement, and obviously desire to see more. And I know that's his goal. We have some wonderful teachers and staff and administrators in Knox County. And so I think we ought to do our best to make this system the very best it can possibly be. I would argue that I think it would be somewhat arrogant to think that this system could meet the need of every student and every child in Knox County. And so I will be against this resolution. And I feel that this gives parents the opportunity in various situations. I'm blessed with great schools in our community, and I appreciate them and appreciate our folks, and I know the rest of you do as well. But there are situations where I think there are better options than what we can provide, and I think this gives parents a choice and to do what they think is best for their child. So, my vote is not really necessarily is really for the student and for the parents who feel like this would be a better option for them. And so I'd like to see. I'm very comfortable supporting vouchers, and I think we've got a great enough school to compete against that. But I also understand that not every parent feels the same, and so this provides them an opportunity to get a good education for their kid or some services that they need, and so I will oppose this resolution on Thursday.
Can we keep the talking down, please? Some board members are having a hard time hearing others. Thank you. I agree with Mr. Triplett. I will also not be supporting this resolution, and I do support the governor's initiative for an ESA program. I think, to me, school choice is about competition. I think that's what our country's built on. I think competition raises everyone up so that everyone is successful. I think parents know what's best for their children, and I do agree that we've seen gains in our school system. I think that we've done a good job with student outcomes and focusing on our 4 priorities. But with that said, maybe the school system isn't the best choice for every child. And I think that every child should have those opportunities. Every child should have those choices, and every parent should as well. So I'll also be voting no against this resolution. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Anderson, I appreciate that you mentioned the word competition. That was an argument that was made to me over 4 years ago when I decided to run for the board. Actually, one of the people that helped encourage me to run for the board, we are very in different places. We're in very different places regarding the vouchers, and we had a lot of good conversation. And one of the things he said, the same thing, hey, it's about competition. Everybody gets better, right? Here's what we forget about competition. In competition, there's always losers. That's the nature of competition. That works great in capitalism, like when you're deciding, which clothing brand to go for and who makes the best chicken sandwich, and all that kind of stuff. That's really good, but what we don't want to do when it comes to anything that's designed for the social good is by the system we're creating winners and losers. That's what we don't want to do. And that's, to me, the problem with that language when it comes to competition, when it comes to dealing with our kids. I don't want to create a system that creates more competition, and because here's what's going to happen with a voucher program. You cannot sustain a voucher program to where it addresses every kid. You can't do that. It's way too much cost. Right now, on average, our kids in Knox County will get $2,000 less per pupil than a kid getting a voucher, right? So if you just talk about that, you can't do that. So what you've done is you pulled out some people from the current system, and you're creating a system that, yes, some may get a better chance. And I hear you, Mr. Triplett, like individual parents, like that's what I want. But what you've done probably intentionally is you then harm the system that's going to still, by and large, affect the greatest number of kids, right? Think about what happened with our incarceration system. The moment competition was introduced to it, and now you could have private actors within incarceration systems. We have a huge mass incarceration system in our country because we wanted more competition. We wanted to encourage that. To me, competition is great when we're talking about Walmart and Target, but it's not great when we're talking about anything that's designed for the social good. Whenever we're talking about something that's designed for the social good, there should be not competition. We should design systems that work for the flourishing of all people. And I think the problem with the voucher system is not the pure motivation. I think it's pure, the pure motivation of, hey, I want to give Johnny a chance, right? Like I get that. The problem is you can't give all the Johnnies and Susies the chance using that system. So as you siphon things out of the other system, you actually harm way more kids. Now, you're not going to do it, there's a tipping point. You're not going to do it with ESSA 1.0 or 2.0, right? The amount of volume that we were talking about during the governor's first initial action and plan. But if that's the trend, if that's where we go with public education, then there's going to be a tipping point. And there's going to be a tipping point where there is more harm done than good. Unless you can create a system where everybody gets the chance to do the voucher thing. I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can make it sustainable. So to me, that's my biggest concern about it is, yes, I hear us talking about the individual kids, and that's great. But we as board members, we're not making decisions about individual kids. I've not been asked or elected to make a decision for Johnny or JPQ who lives at 1300 Avenue. I've been elected to help nurture a system that creates flourishing for the most kids. And that's my problem with the vouchers, and I'm getting a little passionate about it, and I wasn't planning on doing it. But I think it's important for us to not only dig into this issue as vouchers, but dig into the issue of introducing competition historically in our country when it deals with things that are designed for the social good. I promise you, if you do that, you will never find a system that went private and introduced competition that was designed for the social good where more people won than lost. You won't. You won't find that. And so if we make the same mistake with our education system, that's where the problem is. It's not about the individual kid in this, and that's not what we've been elected to address. We've been elected to help nurture a public education system where there's flourishing for the most kids, and that's the problem with it.
Ms. Spike?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a person who has done sports nearly all of their life and loves competition, I like the idea of competition, but also being someone that mentors young girls from age 7 to 13 in mountain biking. And if you watch, no matter what, even though there's a scholarship version, I would not put the girls who already have a leg up, who have nice mountain bikes, who have all of the things, who have two parents that do everything for them and have the funds and the means and the time, versus the girls who may not have two parents or have a different guardian situation, have a donated bike that is 10 years old, and just don't even know how to pedal forward. I would not put them against each other, and I think that that's kind of what this does. And realistically, I think also what I would like to ask for is a more robust plan. If we if the state is going to move forward with vouchers, I want to see something that's proven to actually work to serve all children. I don't expect Knox County schools to be able to perfectly serve all students, but I think it's important to understand what our purpose is and not be funneling money to a different place and fostering kind of generally unfair competition. So I would be in support of moving forward with this and this conversation.
Thank you. I just think that right now, the way that it is, only those with the means are able to have choice for their kids. So if I live in a certain zip code or I can afford certain things for my child, those people have choice. Other people may be stuck, and they deserve just as much choice as those in richer zip codes. And in, going back to funding, in 2021 to the current year, so in a 3-year, in 3 years, we've seen over $160 million more come into the school system in those last 3 years. So the fact that money's being taken out of public schools, I think, is a scare tactic. We see, and that's not even including federal funds.
Ms. Henderson?
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I can't, I'm getting a lot of side noise here. And
Okay, thank you, Ms.
really
Christie.
focus.
If we can't keep the noise down, I will have the officers ask some people to leave if you have an issue. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Christie. And again, we also don't have a full board. So to bring this major policy to a partial board, I'm also in disagreement with as well. Thank you. Anyone else? Discussion?